How many of you ever said something like in 1 second, in half a second, that as the words were going out of your mouth, you wished you could already take it back? Happened to you, no? And once you say that word in 1 second to somebody that you care about or somebody important in your life that are those words you want to take back, think of it. 1 second to say it. How long could it take you to make up for that 1 second? Could be a lifetime. So understanding our thoughts and what we can do about them is essential for our life, very simply. And so they give us some ideas called the placebo effect. You ever heard of the placebo effect? So my teacher, the Rav Philip Berg, great Kabbalist, wrote in one of his books about this one story of a gentleman who had, third stage cancer, fourth stage cancer, something, and so participated in this one experiment where they gave him an experimental drug, which of course was just water. But they told him that it was a new cure for his particular type of cancer. And sure enough, day by day by day, his cancer disappeared until he was completely free and clear of that cancer. So of course, unfortunately, a few months later, he heard the word that it was just an experiment, it was just a test, and the real drug that he hadn't been given didn't work, and what he had been given was a placebo anyway. And guess what happened? Shortly thereafter, he got sick again with a cancer, and he died. So it just goes to give us some validation to this concept of mind over matter. Our thoughts will manifest in our lives. And therefore, it's essential that we gather ourselves consciously enough to understand our thoughts. In fact, if I say that to you, how many of us before today ever think about our thoughts? Or they just come to you? You don't really stop and think, gee, I wonder where my thoughts come from. They just show up in our brain. But as we're showing that, mind over matter is a very important thing. Because it's determining the thought which will manifest in our life, in words, deeds, actions, etc. And then we have to deal with those consequences. So mind over matter is a very powerful thing in spirituality in general. They talk about the power of the mind, etc., etc. Actually, it's for good or for bad. So, okay, I'll share with you a personal story that when I first came to the Kabbalah Center, or actually the year before I came to the center, I was studying spirituality. And I understood the idea, as we were talking this morning, mind over matter. That your mind, if you hold thoughts strong enough, you can create your reality. So all my life I had various kinds of infections. Horse throat, strep throat, tonsillitis, you go right down the line, ear infections, etc. Till I was about 13. Then all of a sudden it started to disappear. But I was a good friend to the pharmacy and to penicillin. We just start with that. So here I am, I'm studying spirituality, I've been involved for a few years, just before I come to the Kabbalah Center, and I get an ear infection. So I say to myself, great, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to think it away. If mind over matter works, then I should be able to just meditate and think that ear infection to disappear. So I'm working on it, I'm meditating and visualizing, and guess what? Still have the ear infection. So it goes on and on and on, and slowly it's getting more and more painful, till finally it was unbearable. So what did I do? I went to the doctor. And guess what the doctor gave me? Penicillin. Now here's the key for this morning. So as I'm about to take this penicillin, which had been my good friend for many years, I'm looking at the penicillin, I'm thinking about mind over matter, and I'm realizing that this pill represents my failure of mind over matter. So as I'm taking this pill, I'm resenting it terribly. Oy is right. Within an hour, all my joints swell up, prickly heat, and I was allergic reaction to penicillin. I have no doubt in my mind that it came because of my resentment having to take penicillin because mind over matter wasn't working. Fortunately for me, it went away after a while, but shortly thereafter I came to the center and I learned what I'm about to share with you. So we have to start with the idea where our thoughts come from. Because, bless you, because if mind over matter is extremely powerful, if it does guide our life, then we need to know where our thoughts come from so that we can take control over our thoughts. Because if you don't know where they come from and how they enter into your head, then you have no control over them. What enters your head, remember that word that you said that came out in 1 microsecond that you regretted for years and years and maybe a lifetime? Did you stop and ask where that thought came from? No. Just showed up in your brain, and what did you do with it? You just expressed it. And as you're expressing it, without any second thought, you pay the consequence. So now, let me give you this thought, especially if you're newer in the center here. How many of you have a bad habit? How many of you say you don't have a bad habit? Okay, good. All right, so we're all on board. So think about your bad habit. You're under a little stress. Things aren't going well or it didn't go the way you want, etc. And you hear this voice, okay, it's actually on this side, the left side of your brain. This little voice is telling you to do what? Go give in to your bad habit. Whatever it is, because when you give in to your bad habit, what will you get? Immediate relief. Oh, I get to eat my chocolate chip cookie, I get to do whatever it is, I'll run to the gym, I don't know, I'll have a drink, I'll smoke a cigarette, and at least for that short time, I'll have relief from the stress. You all relate? No? Yes? Exactly. Now, how many of you, while that one loud voice on the left side of your brain is screaming out bad habit, bad habit, bad habit, bad habit, because it's going to give you instant relief, how many of you, usually after the fact, can look back and realize on the right side of your head, there was another voice? What's that other voice telling you to do? Not to do the bad habit, but do something good. Right? Don't have the chocolate chip cookie, have the apple. Right? Don't smoke the cigarette, I don't know, go running, whatever it is. But you have a voice on the right side of your head that's telling you the opposite of the voice on the left side of your head. So do you realize that every human being is inherently schizophrenic? You're not all laughing. I'm worried now. Okay. But you get the idea. Not schizophrenic, but we have the two voices in our head. So guess where our thoughts come from? Two different streams of consciousness. And therefore, what is our brain? Our brain is just a receiver. It receives those thoughts, like your radio, like your cell phone, I don't know, like whatever other device we've got going out there. It's just a receiver. Now, that doesn't mean we are powerless. The opposite. The more we understand that we have those two thoughts, then that one stream, let's call it the thought of the opponent, the thought of the bad habit, cannot control us. Because once we become aware of it, yes, it may work a little harder, but we can also work a little harder. We can be more conscious, we can be more aware. We can realize it's trying to push us in the wrong direction that we're going to have to pay for, and we want to be pushed in the right direction. Don't we? We want to learn how to give in to the good habit voice and not deal with the bad habit voice. Because that bad habit voice is exactly that. It's bad habit. And what does that give us? Instant gratification, short-term fulfillment, and long-term chaos. The voice of the good habit doesn't pay off as well. Not instantly. Imagine, whatever your bad habit is, the ice cream versus the apple. In the first bite, which is going to feel or taste better? The ice cream. But after the ice cream is finished and the guilt starts to come in, versus the apple that doesn't taste so good in the beginning, but after the apple is finished, now you're a little happier, a little more content, you're a little more serene because you didn't give in, now which pays off better. And that's what we've got to keep in mind. We've got to be able to see past our immediate gratification. So now, I want to take you to another story here. to understand that both of these thoughts, both of these streams of consciousness, they come from the same place. If you think about it, they originate in the same place and they use the same power. Because there is only one power in the universe. We could call it the power of God. The Kabbalists teach us it's called the light force of the Creator. It's only one power. So then, how do we have the good habit and the bad habit voices if it comes from one place? Because ultimately, the bad habit, I mean, think about, when do you decide to change your bad habit? Yeah, when it hurts too much. After you've had enough of it. After you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of giving in to the guilt and the immediate gratification, then you'll do something about it. So then, even the bad habit, eventually where does it lead us? Back to the good habit. To the thoughts of the light. To be more light-like, as we would say. So what we want to grasp and understand is how can we take all the thoughts of the negativity, the bad habit, and turn them into good. And so it's going to start here. There's a very interesting biblical story. Now follow the pattern. We, the Israelites, the children of Israel, the children of Jacob, we are enslaved in Egypt. We see all the miracles called the 10 plagues. We get freed from Egypt. We're traveling 40 years in the desert, and we're on our way to what they call the Promised Land. Whatever you consider the Promised Land, the most spectacular health, wealth, peace of mind, love, kindness, goodness, entertainment, everything you would think of, the Promised Land. We're on our way. Now, just on the border of walking into the Promised Land, what does Moses do? God tells him, Moses, I want you to send spies into the Promised Land and check it out. What is he really saying? He's asking them, I want you to see where is their thought, where is their perspective, where is their consciousness. Because as the Kabbalists teach us, consciousness is everything. As you're now seeing, placebo effect, mind over matter, etc. So where your consciousness is, so will go your body. So he sends the spies in, 12 of the highest level consciousness people, 12 of the most righteous people of that generation. And they walk into the land, they spy out the land, and they come back. And what do they report to Moses? Said, Moses, yeah, it's a great land. It's a land of milk and honey, all these wonderful things. He says, but there are giants in the land. And then they say the key for us this morning. And then they tell him, and we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. And unfortunately, because of that, they were unable to enter into the Promised Land. They had to die out in the desert, and it was the next generation that went in. But the key for us is to understand that phrase, we were grasshoppers in their eyes. Because what is it really saying? They don't know. Did they really say? They didn't come and say, yes, they called us grasshoppers because we were smaller than them. No, it was their own perspective of themselves. They saw the giant and they thought of themselves as grasshoppers. Less than, less powerful, less strong, less good, less whatever. And so for you and I, that's the question we have to ask ourselves. How do we view ourselves? Are we also grasshoppers? Do you look around the world and you see giants in your life? Do you see trouble? Do you see difficulty? Do you look at other people and say, wow, look at them. Compared to them, I'm nothing. Compared to that situation, I don't know, I'm powerless. If we, in our own eyes, are like grasshoppers, are powerless, are weak, are nothing, then two things. One, we will not be able to enter into our promised land. We will not be able to have the good that we're supposed to have. And two, probably the worst part, because it takes away the source of our power. We're denying, bless you, we're denying the fact that we are created and given the power of the Creator itself. And the power of the Creator can do anything. As Moses then, if you continue to read, he says, really, it's the power of the Creator that will defeat the giants. It's not just us. But if you see yourself as grasshoppers, if you see yourself as powerless, so are you. Mind over matter. Whatever you decide in your mind and you carry it with you will manifest. That's what was so interesting. When all of a sudden, seemed almost out of nowhere, they came up with this whole idea of the law of attraction. Some of you remember that. The law of attraction. Like it was a new concept. No, the law of attraction has been around since the Big Bang. Like attracts like. Like attracts like. So there's never, ever been a time that we have not been working with mind over matter. It's only a question of being aware what's in the mind that's creating the physical matter of your life. That's the issue. So the beauty of that is once you can accept that concept, then it's easy to tell what's going on in your mind. Or what's the majority thought in your mind. And here's the tough part. But it's also the most empowering. Look at your life. Look at your life. The things that are good in your life are because you're holding those light-like or God-like thoughts and you're carrying them through to fruition. The things that are not the way you would like to have them, they are not as good as you could imagine, is a feedback to you that you're not keeping in mind and following with action those light-like thoughts. You can tell yourself, gee, I wish I had, I wish I was, I wish I could achieve, I wish I could do. But if you're wishing it, what are you really saying to yourself? The majority of your thought is the negative, but I'm wishing the good. I'm hoping that the good will take place. So think about it then. Which has the majority power of your thought? Which has the majority of the power of your creator nature? Because as we said, both streams of consciousness are empowered by the light of the Creator, your creator nature. But just like you could do with a potter's wheel. Anyone here ever worked with clay on a potter's wheel? One. Anybody ever seen a potter's wheel? Okay. So you take that, so good, then it worked out. Then all of us who are not so good, you throw that lump of clay on the potter's wheel, and the wheel starts to spin. The same two hands that you and I are going to use to create exactly something not so recognizable, the same two hands the potter will use to create something gorgeous. So then what's the difference? What's the difference? We are not using our creator ability the way they are. So it's the same thing. When you look at your life and you see the parts that aren't working and the parts you'd like to change, then don't try and change it on the outside and don't try and get somebody else to change it for you. You're the one who has the two hands, the light of the Creator, and you have to keep in your mind the heavier thoughts, the heavier weight of thoughts to outweigh the negative. You have to outweigh it with positive. I have the light of the Creator inside me, and I can achieve, and I can overcome, and I can deal with it. Because I don't care, everybody out there that has what you want, or looks like what you want, or even just what you're imagining you want, what empowers it? It's still the light of the Creator. Because there's nothing else. It's like that clay. So the clay can become something gorgeous, or it can become something not so gorgeous. Depending on us, depending on, as we're speaking today, our consciousness, our thoughts that we carry with us all the time, not just the hopes and wishes. We have to build added strength. We have to shift our perspective. Again, same situation, two different perspectives. My son goes to school in North Miami Beach. He goes to a parochial school. So he has long hours usually during the week. So the Friday after Thanksgiving, this last Friday, he only had 4 hours of school. So, he's got to get up, he's got to drive down to North Miami, he's got to do 4 hours and then come back. So he wakes up in the morning and he says, you know what, I'm going to go because it's only 4 hours, and that way, down the line, if I want to take a day off, I've saved that absence because it's only 4 hours. He has another friend in the same school who also lives here in Boca, who thought to himself, you know what? Why should I get up, go through the effort to get dressed, to drive the 45 minutes down there, only 4 hours, and then drive 45 minutes back? So he stayed home. So I thought about it. I said, that's perfect for this morning. Because it's the same situation. It's the 4 hours, it's the same drive. But one looked at it and said, no, I'll go because it's only 4 hours, so it's not a big deal, and I can save that absent day for something else I want to do. And the other one looked at it and said, no, it's just not worth my time and effort to get up for only 4 hours. So you cannot look at other people, you've got to look at yourself. What are you thinking about this situation? What are you deciding about the situation? Because it's up to you and your perspective. And I'm not saying one was right or wrong. I just want you to understand the example that what you decide comes from inside you and how you look at it. So one thought it was worth it, one thought it wasn't. Based on their own value, nobody else's value. And we go about our lives doing that all the time. We're creating our own value on our own perspective, what we think it's worth. So that's why do we give in to the voice of the bad habit? Because we think it's worth it. Because we're only measuring right now. If I'm under a little stress and I want stress relief now, what am I going to get it from? The bad habit. So I'll listen to that voice. If I look at a bigger picture and I think to myself, no, but what's going to happen in an hour from now or 2 hours or a week down the line, then I'll give in to my good habit. It'll have more power. So yes, now we go back to like attracts like. And we can ask ourselves, if like attracts like, and I want to decide which one of those two streams of consciousness I want in my head to be stronger, then what do I have to do? It's not so difficult. All I have to do is act more like the light, do more acts of kindness, sharing, love, forgiveness, compassion, generosity, humility, the light behaviors, the creator behaviors, the godlike behaviors. And as like will attract like, then the more actions I do in those ways that will reveal the light of my soul, my creator nature, into the world, towards others, then I'm automatically tuning more to that voice of the light in my head. Because like will attract like. Now, does that mean that the negative thoughts are not going to be there? Of course they're going to be there. Shucks, huh? But why do the negative thoughts have to be there also? One is just to test us. Do we believe in the universe? Do we believe in Kabbalah? Do we believe in spirituality simply as positive thinking? And I'm not disrespecting positive thinking. I want you to understand what it means. Because for many people, what's positive thinking? I'm going to think positive, and as long as I get my positive results, I'll keep thinking positive. So what happens when things don't go well? All of a sudden, positive think the other way, exit. And now we have to try something else. But the Kabbalists explain to us, this is not just positive thinking. Because like the Zohar, which is the source of all Kabbalistic wisdom, basically the blueprint of the universe, tells us, the light and blessing can only come out of the darkness. Light will only come out of the darkness. And it says, the blessings in our life come from good thoughts, from good contemplation. Because you could say, if I only think the negative thought, what's the big deal? I'm not going to do it. That's right, maybe not now. But if you think about the weight over time, the more thoughts, the more energy a person gives to that negative thought, even though they're only thinking it. We may not be punished per se for the thought, but you allow those negative thoughts to continue to add up. Then think of the scale. The more negative, the more negative, the more negative starts to outweigh the positive. And eventually, when you give enough power, small piece by small piece by small piece, to the negative thoughts, it will eventually create a negative action. And then we pay the price. And then we have to find a way to change it. So the easier thing to do is be conscious of the thoughts that are in our head. And make that effort, as the Kabbalists teach us, to transform it. Because it literally says in the Zohar that the tree of life, which is paradise, all the good things we could ever imagine, is made up from all those good thoughts. Because the same way, the more we'll hold on to the good thoughts, eventually they will come out our behavior. But it also says, when a person lets go of those good thoughts and the negative thoughts start to come in more and more and more, it takes the tree of life and it turns it, as the Zohar calls it, into the tree of death. And it doesn't have to be physical death. But sometimes when a person's business has difficulty, or relationship, or health, it almost feels like death. In fact, the Zohar writes, poverty is tantamount to death. That a poor person is like a dead person. So we can be poor in many ways, not just financially. But then it also explains that a person who's in that state can also then transform that tree of death back to the tree of life. As we're discussing, what does it take? Repetition. Because we're not just positive thinking. We understand that our thoughts come from the light of the Creator. It comes with that power. So we have the power to transform everything. So as you hear the thought of that bad habit voice, what we call that opponent, then just like anything else, like your opposing side over there, you want to counteract it. So when it's bringing in the negative thoughts, immediately, as fast as you can think of it, be aware of it, turn it into something positive. Turn it into something light-like. So you're thinking how difficult the business is. Remember, with the power of the light force, and the thought, and the contemplation, and the actions that will follow, the business can be transformed from chaos to harmony, from poor business to good business. As can health, which we're going to talk about more next week, as can relationships, as can anything in life. As we will make use of the power of the Creator. As we learn to shift it. Because we're not just here to set aside our bad thoughts and then try and just have positive thoughts, good thoughts and actions. We're here actually to transform. Because we said it comes from the same source. So the source of the light thoughts, the source of the negative thoughts, both from the light of the Creator of the endless world. So that's why it's out of darkness comes light. When we take our negative thoughts and we transform them into those sharing, loving, kind thoughts, then the darkness disappears and the light is revealed. And the blessings show up. It's only up to us. It's only up to us in our consciousness. We decide. We decide. I read an interesting story. I think she was 14. Okay, let's say she was 14. 14-year-old girl. Played soccer. Enjoyed her sports. And one day, she started feeling tingling in her toes. So her parents took her to the doctor. She was diagnosed with MS. 14 years old. So now imagine, first thought in her head you think is going to be the light or is going to be the bad habit, the opponent? The opponent. She said she locked herself in a room, she cried all day, right? Why me, why me, why me? And after the tears ran out, what did she decide? And it's very empowering. This is a 14-year-old girl. I'm looking at myself, I'm looking at people around me, I say, wait, what about us? This is a 14-year-old girl. She decides, whatever's going to happen, she's going to make the most out of every day possible. So what does she do? She can't play soccer anymore because it's contact sport. But she decides she's going to be a runner. Imagine, slowly she's losing the feeling in her legs and she's long distance running. 5K, 3 point whatever miles. And she's running and she's running and she's competing. She's not just running, like jogging it, she's running in competition. And the video shows at the end of it, her coach has to catch her because heating up the body exacerbates the MS. And by the time she's finished, she can't feel a thing. And she just, instead of collapsing, the coach is catching her. But when you see the smile on her face, it's inspirational. And she says, don't feel my legs. She doesn't feel them. But she's learned how to pace herself. She's learned to know that it's going. They're going anyway. She can make them go even if she doesn't feel it. And I thought to myself, if she can do that, what's she putting in her head? She took her negative thoughts, all the down, what happened to her, why and how come, and poor me, and she turned them into, no, I'm going to make the best out of everything. She may not have thought, I don't know, I can't tell you. I have the Creator in me, and I'm going to make use of that. I don't know if she did or not, but it's certainly an example that we can take. So whatever our challenges are, I hope they're nothing like that. But whatever they are for us, they're big enough. They're big enough for us to make the effort to transform them, to change them, to overcome them. To remember, we have the two that come into our brain. It's our choice which one we are going to listen to. It's our choice which one we're going to manifest. It's our choice to do the actions that will attract us more one or the other. It's only up to us. It's not up to anybody else. We have to decide. We have to determine which one we want. And which one we want then, which I hope is the thoughts of the light and all that will come with it. So the key then is the exercise of repetition. Because it's also intensity. It's not just our thought. Because like we said, sometimes hoping and wishing and dreaming about, it's not intense enough. I mean, think about it. Which is easier for you to gather the power behind? Anger or happiness? When you're angry, I mean, we have a term called blind rage. Never heard of blind happiness. There's a gentleman in Israel that I met when I first came to the center almost 30 years ago. He was blind. But what was interesting, he wasn't born blind. He was in the army. He was in one of the wars that unfortunately is constantly going on in the Middle East. And he had his buddy with him. And one day, in the combat, a bomb came, whatever it was, and blew up his friend right in front of his eyes. And he tells the story. He looked up in the heavens, and he basically screamed. And imagine the passion, the intensity that was behind it. He looked up in the heavens, and he said to the Creator, to the heavens, if that's what life is about, he didn't want to see anything else. And from that point forward, he started to lose his sight. Mind over matter. To gather the same energy, to counteract that and get his sight back, imagine the effort. Because it's much easier to have energy behind our negativity. What we're learning here is how to put more energy behind the positivity. And if we can't put more intensity of energy, then we have one other weapon. Repetition. Constantly reminding ourselves. Constantly reminding ourselves. I have the power of the Creator. I have the Creator in me. I have the power of creation. I am a pure and perfect being of light. And like we're doing every week, I'd like you to say that after me, with me. I am a pure and perfect being of light. You say it again, a little more intensity. I am a pure and perfect being of light. You have to keep saying it till you believe it. And that's why we're going to repeat it every week, every week, every week, every week. And I certainly encourage you during the week to do it. To keep repeating it to yourself. Put it on your bathroom mirror. Because we've got to counterbalance what that opponent has told us, what that opponent has put in our head. We have to start shifting it. Because why? Mind over matter is constantly working. What we hold in our thoughts will determine what's going to come out in our physicality. So we've got to keep repeating it one more time. I am a pure and perfect being of light. Now, turn to your neighbor and say, you are a pure and perfect being of light. Now, the work for this week before we do the meditation. Just one point I want to make. If I ask you like this, and I do it with my students sometimes. If I ask you right now, please don't think of pink elephants. Okay? I don't want you to think of pink elephants. Right? So you're not thinking of pink elephants. Right? No pink elephants. No? I don't want you to think of pink elephants, so you're not thinking of pink elephants, yes? Yeah. So what's in your mind? Pink elephants. So the key to this is not thinking of what you don't want. So I had a couple who got it. when I do it one-on-one. Okay, so I don't want you to think pink elephant. So they smile at me. I don't know, maybe they heard it before, maybe the word is spread around. So what do? They think of green monkeys. The key is, the point I want to make is, as we're going through this repetition and the light-like thoughts, don't worry the negative will come up. Turn them into, like the pink elephant will come, you turn it into something else. So the key is thinking of what you want. Thinking of what you want to achieve and using the power of the Creator in you to achieve it. Don't think of what you don't want, because then you're giving it power. So you've got to focus this week on first the thought, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to see manifest? What do you want mind over matter to bring into physicality? And then live into that. Which means, if you're looking for more prosperity, give. If you're looking for more love, give. If you're looking for greater health, give. Be what you want. That's mind over matter. And repeat it, and repeat it, and repeat it, and repeat it. It's easier the more repetition. So the same thing, the more people you have around you who are thinking in the same way and helping you to think in the same way, that's why you look at each other. You are a pure and perfect being of light. Because the more people we will have in that consciousness think, then it'll be easier for us to be influenced by that. And then the last part before we do our meditation, pick a place. If it's a place you've been, if it's a place you've heard of, pick an energy spot for your meditations and your prayers.